I'm sure you've heard more than a few theories about Ralsei in the days since Chapter 3 and 4 came out. Ralsei's a Titan. Ralsei's a goner. Ralsei's whatever ERAM is. Ralsei's a girl. That last one is true, by the way. My uncle works at Toby Fox. Go watch this video by Chattercat for more info on that idea. Now, in the final days of the Chapters 3 and 4 era, I thought it was time to put my stake in the ground and say, Ralsei is an imaginary friend. Hello there, I'm Kojin Summoner, but feel free to call me Theo. This is my first real video ever, so forgive the simplistic visuals. DaVinci Resolve scares me and I have a time limit. Anyways, this video is building on the bones of other theories. In particular, I'd recommend watching Cammy Boy G's video on why Ralsei cannot be an object, and Nighthawk's video on Ralsei and ERAM because they provide the foundation for this video. Oh, and also Cammy Boy G's first Delta ramble with Seek stuff. While I may have differing opinions on the fine details, I do believe that Seek is right in that ERAM as a separate demonic entity just does not exist. I say all this because Nighthawk's video talks a lot about ERAM and its similarities to Ralsei. I will be touching on that because, again, I don't believe that ERAM exists. So, the heart of the theory is this. Ralsei is an imaginary friend. But before you get it twisted, I'm not arguing that he's Chris's childhood imaginary friend. Stick with me here. The Titans being Darkners based on a concept/emotion open the doors for so many new ideas and potential Darkners. We know that Titans are fear made manifest, so what would something formed from a more positive emotion look like? I'm not saying Ralsei is the platonic ideal of love and friendship. I believe that the Titans are so powerful, so destructive, and so mindless because they are these raw, primal concepts. And compared to them, Ralsei is too small, too defined. He may not be the platonic ideal of love and friendship, but he is the platonic ideal of an imaginary friend. My first piece of evidence is this branch of dialogue that I have genuinely never ever seen anyone talk about before. If someone has, please let me know, because these lines of dialogue truly make me feel insane. First, let's go over the other options. I'd imagine most people, on their first time through Chapter 3, will tell Ralsei that they've seen Ralsei's face before, because, come on, it's release day, we finally got Chapter 3 and 4 after 4 years, and this looks like some sort of opportunity to address why Ralsei looks so much like Azrael. So we all jumped on it. Huh? I'm not quite sure what you... Well, Chris, I'm sorry, but this is my face. And if there's one thing I like about myself, it's this. So even if you think it's boring or too similar to... Don't laugh, Chris. If you think it's the same as... Okay, I get it. You don't think it's too similar. But... Chris! Okay, awesome. Your second time through Chapter 3, because you need to replay it, because you beefed it on the minigames and didn't get S rank either time. This is a universal experience, by the way. Everyone went through this on June 4th, 2025. Anyways, your second time through Chapter 3, you get to this scene again, and you remember how Ralsei says his face is the one thing he likes about himself. So of course you're gonna call his face cute. Huh? Thanks, Well, I couldn't be more happy hearing something like that. That means both you and Susie think I'm cute. Sorry, I'm being proud. I shouldn't let this put me in such a good mood. And in doing so, you completely overlook the "it's unique" option. So let's see what Ralsei has to say. Huh? Thanks, Wait, is that a compliment? I know, I look like a monster, but at the end of the day, I'm not a lightener. I'm just a shadow, like everything else. So it's up to you how you think of me. I'm just a shadow, like everything else. This piece of dialogue, I feel, proves Cammy Boy G's point about Ralsei not being a specific item. I'm just a shadow is so intentionally vague. It's not even I'm just a darkener. Ralsei has had opportunities to tell the Fun Gang what object he is in this chapter, specifically during the lore dump at the beginning of the chapter. I don't think he was going to reveal what object he is when he is cut off, because obviously I don't believe that he is an object. But I do think that that was set up to make us think he was. Basically, I think the story wants the casual Deltarune audience, those that just play the chapters and don't go neck deep into the lore and theory side of it all, to start thinking about what object Ralsei could be so that they can make it a reveal when it comes out he's not an object at all. In any case, I'm just a shadow, even though it's followed by, like everything else, does convince me that Ralsei is a being of pure darkness like the Titans. Anyways, moving on to the really important bit. So it's up to you how you think of me. Ralsei, honey sweetie darling, what does that mean? The core of this theory hinges on this line. What Ralsei meant is that his appearance is based on the people around him and how they see him. Because he is an imaginary friend, and the form he takes is meant to endear himself to those around him. In Chapter 1, Ralsei is shrouded in darkness because he's still cooking. The darkness that makes him up is deciding what he should look like based on who's around him, in order for him to be the ideal imaginary friend. Okay, cool idea, you're thinking. Ralsei looks like Asriel because Chris's ideal friend would resemble his brother. Chris is very distant from his other childhood friends, Noelle and Caddy, in Chapter 1, so it makes sense that it only has Asriel to work off of. Wrong. Well, not wrong. That's all spot on. But that's only 1/3 of the story. Because you know who else Ralsei spends a big chunk of Chapter 1 around? Susie. And do you know who's the one that's shocked by Ralsei's appearance at the end of Chapter 1? Despite not knowing what Asriel looks like? Susie. And do you know who Susie does compare Ralsei to, canonically in universe? Toriel. He looked a little like Asriel? You know, Chris's brother, but not. Yeah, I mean, he does kind of look like Chris's mom. Huh? From, what you just said, he would. So now we know what Susie was thinking here. She was thinking that Ralsei looks like Toriel. And we also know that at the start of Chapter 1, Toriel is the one adult, the one person, really, in Hometown that Susie likes and trusts. It's all Ralsei would have to work with as far as people who Susie likes goes. And this is something I've never heard people talk about. I think it's because by the time we got this information, that Susie really likes and admires Toriel, because Toriel was one of the only people who saw her, helped her, and was kind to her, and that Susie thinks Ralsei looks like Toriel. That came after we stopped asking, why does Ralsei look like Asriel? Partly because chapters 3 and 4 told us that he didn't, and started asking more and more, what is Ralsei? But I think this knowledge, that Ralsei's appearance would, in theory, endear Ralsei to Susie just as much as it would, again, in theory, endear him to Chris, that's critical. That's huge. This is like the advanced version of those Ralsei looks like Asriel to make Chris like him more Chapter 1 era theories. Okay, so Ralsei looks the way he does because he was drawing on the people Chris and Susie trust and admire the most to form his appearance. Cool. Awesome. But I think there's a very important fourth member of the Fun Gang we're forgetting here. Someone who's been here since the very beginning, with the Fun Gang every step of the way, who loves each and every one of them. Lance. You're the fourth member of the fun gang. You've been here since the very beginning, and you love Asriel Dreamer. Deltarune is explicitly a game meant to be played after you beat Undertale. Would you say someone who hasn't played through the true pacifist route has beaten Undertale? Yeah, me neither. Obviously, not every person who plays the true pacifist route is going to come out of it loving Asriel Dreamer. There are gonna be some people who just, for whatever reasons, don't like him. But I think we can agree that most people are going to come out of Undertale at least liking Asriel. And I think Toby Fox knows this too. Is counting on it, really. Just like with Susie and Chris, Ralsei took a form that the player, in theory, would like and trust. A form that would make us want to be his friend. Unfortunately, looking so much like Asriel was just incredibly suspicious to us as players. And that's my theory, that Ralsei is an imaginary friend whose appearance was being created throughout the entirety of Chapter 1 based on the people around him and who they'd be likely to view as a friend. Those people around him being Chris, Susie, and the player. Now you might be wondering, why wouldn't Lancer affect how Ralsei looks? And my answer to that is that Lancer is a Darkner and probably wouldn't have that same presence and power. Also, while Lancer was with the Fun Gang a lot in Chapter 1, it still wasn't as much as Susie, Chris, and the player were. And finally, some alternative ideas. If you don't buy the idea that Ralsei's appearance was still loading in Chapter 1, and think that he was that same fluffy goat boy under his shroud of darkness, then I have this idea for you to ponder over. We have 3 candidates for who could have opened the Castletown fountain. Chris, the Roaring Knight, and Gaster himself. If Chris or the Roaring Knight opened the Castletown fountain, and Ralsei is formed of that darkness, then the theory still holds. Ralsei is shaped by the mind of whoever opened it, and turns out looking like Asriel Dreamer, Chris's brother and December Holiday's best friend. If it's Gaster, I've got nothing. You could make up a million ideas on what connection Gaster might have to the Dreamer family that would make Ralsei look like that, but at the end of the day, that's all headcanons. We have no evidence of what Gaster feels towards the Dreamer family. If you want to bring back Cammy Boy G's Goner Ralsei theory, you could argue that Ralsei was built much more intentionally to look the way he does, in order to appear as friendly to Chris, Susie, and the player as possible. The main points I wanted to make with this video was that Susie thinks that Ralsei looks like Toriel, and because of her good experience with and admiration of Toriel, she would, in theory, find Ralsei's appearance comforting. This idea holds true for the player as well. Basically, it's more than just Ralsei looks like that to make Chris like him. It's Ralsei looks like that to make Chris, Susie, and the player like him. Ralsei being an imaginary friend also means that him traveling between dark worlds makes sense. Either he's like the Titan spawn and just exists wherever there's darkness, or Chris and Susie, by virtue of having him as their friend, quote-unquote, bring him with them each time they enter. Maybe the wait before Ralsei joins up is just how long it takes for him to load in. I think the idea of Ralsei as an imaginary friend has a lot of merit, but the only person I've seen float this idea is Nighthawk, and I disagree with the idea of Ralsei as Chris's childhood imaginary friend. I think, as much of an outcast as they are, Chris wouldn't really need an imaginary friend as a child. They did have friends, and they had their brother. It's really only recently that things have gone downhill. I also believe that Ralsei is genuinely new to existing, for the reasons that Cammy Boy G cites in his videos on Ralsei. Ralsei being an imaginary friend also provides unique context for his issues. He's a being that's made entirely to be someone else's friend, and that's it. The same way a TV is meant to entertain, and an imaginary friend is meant to be someone's companion. And Ralsei does base his entire identity around being a friend. He doesn't even call baking and singing his hobbies. They're just things he does for others, for his friends. He doesn't know what being Ralsei-like means because an imaginary friend doesn't exist as a full three-dimensional person. They only exist in what they can do for others. Ralsei is meant to be a friend, but he is not meant to be a person. But he's becoming one anyways. And I, for one, am excited to see who Ralsei becomes. Hi, thank you for watching my first real video. I'm a fic writer by trade, so this is all new for me. I've had this theory in my head since first playing chapters 3 and 4, but I put off making a video because I've never done it before. But I wanted to get this video out there because I want bragging rights if I'm right. I might end up making more videos. Right now I'm just not sure. I have ideas for videos, character analysis and the like, but they won't always be Deltarune focused. In any case, you can find me on Tumblr at Cogent Summoner. I do have a Twitter and Blue Sky account under the same name, but I never use them. So, thank you again, and see you on the other side of Chapter 5.